Welcome to Tabo Eminent Channel. On April 7, 1945, the Japanese battleship Yamato, one of the greatest battleships of its time, is sunk in Japan's first major counter-offensive in the struggle for Okinawa. Weighing 72,800 tons and outfitted with 9 18.1-inch guns, the battleship Yamato was Japan's only hope of destroying the Allied fleet off the coast of Okinawa. But insufficient air cover and fuel cursed the endeavor as a suicide mission. Struck by 19 American aerial torpedoes, it was sunk, drowning 2,498 of its crew. The Japanese battleship Yamato was sunk by Allied forces on April 7, 1945, during World War II in one of the most dramatic naval battles of the Pacific Theater. Thanks for watching. Request you to subscribe the channel. The mission. Beach herself and use her massive guns to defend against the Allied invasion. Fight until destroyed. She was accompanied by the light cruiser Yahagi. Significance. Marked the end of Japan's surface naval power. Demonstrated the decisive power of air superiority over traditional battleship strength. Symbolized Japan's desperate final efforts in the war. Let me know if you want more about the mission, the survivors, or the wreck's discovery later on. Under the gray skies of April 7, 1945, the Japanese battleship Yamato steamed toward Okinawa on a doomed mission, her decks bristling with the largest guns ever mounted on a warship, but her fate already sealed. She carried over 3,000 men, many of them young and fully aware they would not return. Operation Tengo was less a military strategy and more a final, desperate act, a kamikaze run at sea. As the U.S. Navy's carrier-based planes descended in wave after relentless wave, the Yamato's mighty guns could do little against the sky. Torpedoes slammed into her port side, bombs cratered her decks, and fires consumed her hull until, just past 2 in the afternoon, the battleship heeled over and exploded with a force so great it shook the sea. In moments, she was gone. Fewer than 300 men survived, pulled from the oily, wreckage-strewn waters while the rest perished with their ship. For Japan, Yamato's sinking marked the end of her naval might and became a haunting symbol of sacrifice, futility, and a vanishing world of warrior ideals swallowed by the modern age. The days leading up to Yamato's final voyage were heavy with silence and ritual. In the port of Tokuyama, sailors lined the decks in crisp uniforms, staring into the sea, many writing farewell letters or praying at Shinto shrines aboard the ship. Officers tried to instill purpose, but the unspoken truth lingered in every command: this was a suicide mission. The mood was somber, yet resolute. As Yamato left harbor in the early morning of April 6, she sailed like a ghost from a fading empire, her massive silhouette cutting through calm waters, followed by a small escort of ships bound for the same fate. By the next day, as the fleet approached open ocean south of Kyushu, American scout planes caught sight of the formation. What followed was not a naval duel, but a brutal, one-sided assault from the sky. The sea erupted with explosions as American aircraft attacked in coordinated waves, striking with terrifying precision. Yamato's anti-aircraft gunners fought valiantly, filling the sky with flak, but it was like trying to swat hornets with cannonballs. Below deck, crew members worked in suffocating heat and smoke, some desperately trying to repair damage, others dying instantly as torpedoes punched through the hull. Survivors later spoke of walls buckling, bulkheads bursting, comrades screaming and disappearing in flashes of fire. When the order came to abandon ship, it was already too late for most. At 2:23 p.m., the great battleship capsized and exploded, sending a massive plume of smoke and debris thousands of feet into the air. The shockwave rippled across the water, and then silence fell, only the cries of the wounded and the hiss of burning oil remained. The East China Sea became a graveyard. In the years after, the story of Yamato endured not as a tale of victory, but as a powerful, heartbreaking symbol of a generation lost to war, and the end of Japan's dream of imperial destiny. In the long hours after Yamato vanished beneath the waves, the survivors floated alone in the vast, oil-slicked sea, surrounded by shattered wood, twisted metal, and the haunting silence of a ship that moments before had been alive with thunder. Some clung to pieces of debris, too injured to call for help, their burnt skin stinging in the salt water, their ears still ringing from the final explosion. Others, disoriented and half-mad with grief, called out the names of friends who would never answer. The water was cold, and the sky above had turned strangely still, as if even the war itself had paused to mourn. American pilots, circling above the wreckage, radioed the location of survivors, and a few were eventually rescued, some by Japanese destroyers before they, too, were sunk or forced to flee, others by chance in the days that followed. For those who lived, survival was a strange kind of sorrow. Many were ashamed to have returned when so many others had not. They carried the weight of memory, of the screaming, the fire, the sudden lurch of the deck as Yamato rolled for the last time, and the eerie calm that came when she was gone. Back home, their arrival brought no celebration. The loss was kept quiet, swallowed by the censors and the shame of defeat. But among the sailors, and in the hearts of the families who never saw their sons return, Yamato became something sacred. Not just a warship, but a floating nation of souls, brave, frightened, and ultimately sacrificed in a war already lost. Her death was the last gasp of an old Japan, a steel monument to an empire's final dream, shattered in the waves before it could reach the shore. Under attack, a hell of fire and water. When the U.S. planes swarmed overhead, the noise was deafening. Bombs and torpedoes hit with terrifying force. The Yamato shook violently. Fires broke out. The deck became a maze of death, twisted metal, smoke, burning fuel, screams. Below decks, men were trapped in pitch darkness as water and flames rushed in. Some tried to escape upward, others were lost instantly. One sailor recalled, "The ship listed hard. It felt like the sea was swallowing us sideways. I heard explosions, men yelling, then silence." The survivors, thrown into the sea. When Yamato finally rolled over and exploded, the blast was so massive it tossed survivors dozens of feet into the air. Those who lived were mostly the ones already on the deck or near the edge. They clung to debris, oil-soaked and burned. Sharks came. American pilots dropped life rafts for them, a surprising moment of humanity in a sea of death. Out of over 3,300 crew, only 276 were rescued. Aftermath in Japan, silence, then sorrow. At first, Japan didn't publicly acknowledge Yamato's loss. The country was still reeling, trying to keep up morale. Mothers waited, wives mourned, children grew up with photos of men who never came home. When the truth came out after the war, Yamato's name became legend. Not just for its size, but for the waste of so many young lives. Yamato in Japanese memory. The city of Kure, where she was built, houses the Yamato Museum. They've built a stunning 1/10 scale model of the ship. Veterans and tourists still visit to reflect. In pop culture, the ship inspired everything from movies like Yamato, 2005, to anime like Space Battleship Yamato, which reimagines her as a vessel for hope. Final words. The Yamato was more than a ship. She was a symbol of a nation's dreams, desperation, and eventual downfall. Her story is one of courage and loss, of steel giants and fragile lives.